Really nice to be here. My name is Runa. I'm a researcher at Royal Roads University. And before we begin, I just quickly want to acknowledge the lands of the Xwməthkwəy and Lekwungen people where I'm usually working. So before I begin, I wanted to give a little bit of background as to why I'm here and why I'm studying what I'm studying now. And during my doctoral research, I was studying energy consumption in Canada, and I really noticed that there was differences or discrepancies. There were people that were using a lot more, and there were people that were using less. And the factors that contribute to this, there are several things like age and income, but what really sat with me or left me wondering was, are people getting their energy needs met? And more recently, with the energy transition, we're going to have lots of reconfigurations, with our institutions, with our infrastructure. So as we transition, is it going to be more difficult for some people versus others? And how can we ensure equity in Canada's energy transition? So this coincides with the international policy agenda of the UN sustainability goals, including SDG 7, ensuring access to affordable, reliable, sustainable, and modern energy for all. What I find really interesting about this is that this also pertains to us here in Canada, to make sure that all these things exist here for us here. So I really like numbers, and I like to just have this up here. What do we mean when we're talking about the residential sector? And we're talking about this today, right? We're talking about there's owners, there's also renters, and there's tenants, and there's those who live in subsidized housing and those in social housing. So when we energy transition and we're thinking about equity, let's think about all those folks as we're transitioning. And so this is something that, I'm always thinking about as I do my work. So more recently, I've been studying energy poverty. Energy poverty is an internationally known issue. It's an established policy agenda in several countries and proliferating. There are countries that have national energy poverty strategies, such as the UK, Scotland, Spain. And for me, what is energy poverty? It's when we're not getting, or someone's not getting, their domestic energy service needs met. And these needs are important for us materially, so that we are warm, we are cold or cool when we need to be cool, but because we also have social needs as well, and energy provides that as well. Energy poverty in Canada is getting attention, which is good. So just a little bit of research that I want to talk about. I looked at, or our team looked at, measuring energy poverty, and we used energy burdens as a proxy for looking at energy poverty. We looked at the ratio of household energy expenditures to household income. Households in energy poverty spent more on energy expenditures as a proportion of their total expenditures compared to households not in energy poverty. And the things that predicted what put households in energy poverty, the main factors were low income, geography, and their dwelling conditions. So I'm not going to go through too many graphs, don't worry. But I just wanted to point out two. So this is where we're looking at the budget share. And so how much are people spending on energy services as a proportion of their total budget? And so these are people that are not in energy poverty, and they're spending about 3% of their total budget on energy services. And then we look at folks that are in energy poverty, and they are spending, as a proportion of their budget, 15%. So 15% and 3%, that's a big deal. And what I find really interesting about this graph is that when people have more disposable income, they're spending more of their budget on energy services. So that leaves me wondering if people are going without the energy services they need. So most recently, we did some research where we looked at how does energy poverty impact health. We looked at energy burdens. We asked people about their thermal comfort. People who were experiencing energy poverty measured in these various ways rated their general and mental health as significantly poorer than those who were not. And this pertains to the whole Canadian population. We use population data for this study. So this just came out not too long ago. I've looked at, or our team has looked at also policies in place, and I guess we're talking about policies today. And so we've looked at policies in Ontario from 2003 to 2018. We can categorize a lot of these in terms of financial support, energy efficiency and savings, and consumer protection. And a lot of the recommendations I'm going to be talking about in a second or in a moment have to do with these kinds of initiatives. So not too long ago, back in the fall, myself and my research partner, Professor Mari Martinskainen, we wrote a report for the David Suzuki Foundation on energy poverty, ensuring energy affordability and equity and access in the transition to clean electricity in Canada. And a big basis for this was the idea of the clean electricity regulations and the transition to electrification. And I quickly want to talk about some of the broad recommendations that we have. And this report can be found from the David Suzuki Foundation website. So one of the first things that we're really recommending is an energy poverty strategy. There are many countries that have a strategy, and it would be really great to have one as a guiding framework, using things and concepts like energy justice, having an energy poverty advisory group as a part of this. And these folks could speak to the idea of, well, we need more energy data, and this has been coming up, right? We need to see who is consuming what, are they consuming enough, and how much are they spending for their consumption all together. Right now in Canada, these data sets are available in different spots. They're not put together. And we would like to see an energy poverty definition, indicators and targets, so we can track, so we can measure and see, and get like a baseline to work from. Energy service, here it's energy service, but I mean, we could think about it as an energy need, right? And move away from this idea of energy as a commodity, and accordingly, making sure that consumers have protection and access to energy services. We know there's a heating ban in a lot of jurisdictions, but with cooling becoming really, really important, a life or death matter in some situations, recommend that we can't disconnect cooling as well. So one of our recommendations was an all-season energy disconnection ban. The right to cool and to heat. So making sure that there's protections in place, that people can get access to cooling, and we've talked about this a little bit on this panel already, similar to heating. So in many jurisdictions, if you're a renter, you have to have heating. Your landlord has to provide heating. So what could that look like in terms of cooling for tenants as well? Keeping energy affordable. Really important as we transition, but even prior to, or on the way to the transition, keeping energy affordable. So there's lots of different programs that are out there. The Lifeline rate isn't, but having maybe rates that are catered to income, maybe something to think about. Bill credits and discounts, seasonal programs, emergency assistance. Something like an emergency assistance, I think it complements some of the others, and I think all of these things are complementary. And I think we might be talking about that in our panel discussion too, in terms of like what's the most important And it's very hard for me to say one of those things it's the most important, but I think we need to have all these kinds of measures together. And lastly, and this has been talked about a little bit by others as well, but just want to restate some of these points. So an energy efficiency resources standard, where utilities are participating, where there's utility targets, I think this could really incentivize utilities to do more, to really be part of the solutions and address energy efficiency. So building sector targets. There's a lot of net zero building mandates that are popping up for new builds. Really, really good and important. But what about the older buildings? We absolutely need to retrofit. And there's been I think Betsy put up some data around there about some of the stock that was built prior. I mean, approximately 86% built before 2006. And this is 25 to 40% less efficient than stock built after this time. So for Canada to reach its targets, over half of the existing homes and buildings need to be retrofitted in Canada. And GHG savings from retrofits can be realized more quickly than reductions from other sectors. We need funding for low-income programs, low-income energy efficiency. And we're going to hear that, I think, over and over today. Free heat pump programs, free electric water heater programs, so that we can transition folks to renewable energy, folks that otherwise might not be able to do so. I forgot to talk about the MURBs. We've got a lot of renters. We've talked about this. We need to start figuring out this split incentive. Some things that maybe could help is having minimum building performance standards, building energy labeling, individual metering or sub-metering, revisions in tenancy acts. We really want to minimize passing on costs to those who can't pay. And a quick mention about those heat pump programs and electric water heater programs, no matter what the fuel source is, right? Like we need to get people off of gas too, or fossil gas or natural gas as well. So not just oil. Education and collaboration. The recommendation regarding community outreach and education delivery, this came from Camo's work and Yasmin's work, where they talked about how a lot of people don't even know what programs are available to them. So we really need to build a community in terms of understanding and helping each other out. And then recognizing that this isn't an issue for a certain group of stakeholders. This requires all stakeholders, everyone's experiences in towards solutions for mitigating and addressing energy poverty and equity as we transition. So that's it. If you're interested in talking about any of these papers or the research, I'd be more than happy to. The report is on the DSF website. So thanks very much.